All right, here we are. What's going on, Danielle?
What's up? What's up, player?
You got yes, yes. So you are in a you're not moving today. You are in a
Yeah, I am.
okay.
I am back home. I am COVID negative and happy in my office. So
That is super off. So
yeah,
COVID negative.
yes.
So just so you know, 2 shots, got them.
Oh,
Wednesday will be two
nice,
plus
nice.
two. Yes, Wednesday will be 2 shots plus 2 weeks. So it is the socially responsible thing to do, folks, to protect the people around you. Danielle gets tested regularly, and it
Yeah,
is a painful process because of the whole up the nose thing.
yeah. It is intrusive, but
Yes.
I'm planning to get my vaccine. So it's on the schedule to get done to start my process. So I'm excited.
Outstanding,
Yeah,
outstanding across
yeah,
generations. That's how
yes,
we bring
for
this thing
sure.
back.
I
Plus,
don't
we
want
got stuff
anything to
to do.
slow me down.
That's what
No,
I'm talking
slow me
about. We
down,
got
player.
things to do. We got
Yeah,
things to do.
yeah.
So, and speaking of things to do,
Mhm.
wow, this is episode 3. Episode
Boom.
3. Can you believe this? So, this has been going on. This is the third episode across 6 weeks now.
Yeah, yeah.
For Dad from a Distance. This episode is all about boundaries from a distance.
Mhm.
And you and I talked a little bit about this a little over a week ago.
Mhm.
And, you were saying something about, we talked initially about kind of having this be a chronological journey. And
Right,
then when we
right.
talked about boundaries, you're like, you know what?
Yeah,
Tell
it's
folks what you were thinking.
yeah.
So, boundaries across, because it's not just boundaries in any particular part of your life.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and chronologically speaking, it always shows up and it shows up in different ways. So we're going to dive into that a little bit today. We will
Mhm.
probably, as always is the case, learn something from each other that we had no clue about,
Right,
which
exactly.
which has been one of the joys, absolute joys of these conversations. But we're also going to do something. We're going to turn it up a notch starting with this episode as well, because now you and I have started to get some questions that have started coming in, and people
Mhm.
are saying, "Can you address this?" and "You can address that." And I mean, some of it's kind of spicy and saucy.
A
Um,
little saucy.
yeah, a little saucy, or at least anticipated to be.
Right,
But
right.
we're going to get it. We'll absolutely get into that because that's important too. And we do have the opportunity for. We hope you guys will weigh in. I know some people are watching this on YouTube Live. Some of us are watching it on your Facebook feed, some on my Facebook feed, and we can actually see your comments live too. So if we trigger something that goes, you know what, I want to ask about that, or just weigh in, please do
Yeah,
so, and
please.
we can address it because we are absolutely fine with each other's company. We have
Yeah,
been for a very long time,
right.
but we love having other people's company in the mix as well. So
Absolutely.
boundaries.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we've kind of in the last couple of um, episodes kind of walked through like maybe up until the preteen years,
Mhm.
but as we get into teenage years, even if you're not from a distance, things change.
Yeah.
It's a different game. Uh, I believe that most times what happens through the teenage years is not going to be something that you're going to manufacture or fix or amend in the teenage years. You did all the heavy work. Hey, Melissa, she's saying, "Hey, y'all." Um,
Hey.
that's one of our children.
Right,
Your sister from way
exactly.
back, and
Yeah, yeah.
one of my kids from way back. But all the heavy lifting actually is done just from a
Mhm.
parental point of view 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
So the roots are there. So what you're going to see in the teenage years is not going to be just about the teenage years. It's going to be about what happened at 3, 4, 5, 6.
Right,
But
right.
they are coming. It is the time when I heard someone describe, Danielle, it's the time when teenagers fire their parents as their managers.
I have never heard that. That
Yeah.
is interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And
Mhm.
so boundaries from ladies first. We always talk about this. So
Mhm.
boundaries. Uh
Mhm.
weigh in. What do you recall? What do you think is important to talk about for people to hear?
Yeah, so I think boundaries are very interesting, especially going from a teenage girl
Hmm.
to going to college, living outside the house. to being like not like the fake adult, but like the real adult, the adult that I thought I was, and then the adult that I am now.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think that a lot of it is about giving things space and recognizing who you're talking to and what stage they're in.
Mhm.
Because I think that was really helpful. That there was times that I think you just said, you know what, we don't even have to do. You have to figure this part out, um, and or give it time until you weighed in on it. But I think it's really important. I think from my perspective was to kind of feel like I was in control of my own destiny and my own person, while also still having that figure to look forward to and ask questions about, but not giving too much because I didn't want you to give me the answer. It was very complex during that time. Now
Mhm.
I would like to think that I am much more open because I'm just like, look, let's get it done.
Yeah.
Okay. What you got to say, what I got to say, I want to know. So yeah, I think that's kind of the whole thing when I was younger was making me feel like I was responsible and I had to say. That's what I think those boundaries kind of start finding themselves.
Well, yeah, they start finding themselves.
Right.
But from a parental point of view, we're not really all like it's not an easy transition from
I'm
a
sure.
parental point
I'm
of yes.
sure.
Because while teenagers want to fire their parents are like, I'm not sure even how you thought that was a thing that you could actually fire me.
Right, right,
So
right.
that actually becomes like the beginning of it, so it
Mhm.
is. So I will tell you, there's a couple of instances, and when I mention this one, I know you're going to remember it, but you don't
Okay.
know where I'm going yet, because you never know where I'm going in these things. Uh, because my job is to protect you,
Mhm.
from all danger, all hurt, all harm, uh, and in most of which parents understand or believe, and I think
Right.
both is correct, that kids don't know how big a minefield there is out there. So we're wired from the time you take your first breath
Mhm.
to be your sword and shield. And
Mhm.
so when you start kind of carving out your own space, that becomes difficult for us to let go of.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever really let go of. I think we figured out differently. So I will tell you, Danielle was always big in sports. I mean, she
Mhm.
played soccer, she played softball for about 10 minutes, I think, or something like
Right.
that.
Enough that I was
Basketball.
like, I don't want that. I don't want that.
Yeah, yeah, because there was too much sitting down. You had to sit down half the game, and she was not into that.
Mhm. Mhm.
But as basketball kind of settled in to be the thing, you played traveling basketball,
Mhm.
AAU at national level, and so now it's that time where you start trying to figure out, okay, is there going to be a scholarship in the mix here? So someone told us about this meeting.
Mhm.
It was I think I still have the binder. It was OI. I don't remember what OI stood for, but I
Right.
remember it was something. It was like basically to help you understand the kind of things you might want to prepare to do
Right.
if you're going to get into a scholarship or choose the school you want to go to, something like that. So I remember you and I went to it together,
Mhm.
and which is the case. Everybody, I mean, parents and kids were there, and
Mhm.
so the person facilitating the conversation, Melissa says she had
Yeah,
that
she had
binder
the,
too.
I know,
Yes,
we were all in there together.
yes,
See how long we've known Melissa? See.
yes.
Yeah.
This goes back. So the whoever was facilitating the thing would ask a question, and they would ask a question. Basically, they were asking a question, I think, of the athletes, not really of the kids, of the parents rather.
Mhm.
So they would ask a question. Do you remember this? I
I
don't know.
do.
Yes. So
I'm
they would
looking
ask.
forward to how you tell the story.
Yes, yes. So they would ask a question of the athletes, and they might even ask a question of Danielle, and I would say, well, where we really want to go with that is da 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 da. So the guy kept asking questions, but he wasn't talking to the parents. He was talking to the athletes. but I kept answering these questions on Danielle's behalf. And yes, and so I didn't catch, I was getting that look probably throughout the meeting, but
Mhm.
I didn't see that look because,
Right.
we're trying to figure out how to craft Daniel's
Right.
future here. So, I'm gonna need all these questions like I was your agent
Right.
or something.
Yep. Yep.
Um, so I remember we ended up having a conversation about that. So what do you remember about speaking of boundaries in that place,
Yeah.
speaking for you and that space?
Right, right, right. I think that was one of those really defining times in the shift of our relationship
Hmm.
from you respecting me. And also, I think my mom describes it as trusting what I've instilled in you already.
Hmm.
And so, I think that was the shift because, like, I, I knew I was going to say probably what you were going to ask, or, because let's be honest, we are very similar people. I have
Yes.
embraced that completely. Past 30, I was like, well, I mean, I can't help it. Did we just move in the seat at the same time?
Yes, we
Anyway,
did. Yes,
that's beside the point.
because that's how it
Um,
works.
but I think that my mother and you guys instilled a lot in me, so I felt that confidence, and I think when that was happening, it almost seemed like you don't have a confidence in me. And so, but looking outside, much further out, and with a lot more experience, it was that you cared and wanted to know all of it. But I think I think probably even before that, people weren't directing their conversations to the kids. I think when I started getting in high school, now, we're young adults, we have college next, we have to we'll have to fend for ourselves. So I think that was the biggest thing, was that I'm like, well, I was going to say that, and wanting that confidence from you so that I would also have confidence in myself. So everything kind of was wrapped around that.
Well, I remember specifically because this was one of the first times where, and I think this happens for all kids and parents, where there's just this moment where your kid actually it wasn't talking back; it was like addressing something, uh, and it caught me a little off guard, quite frankly, because you were like, "Dad, I can answer questions for myself,"
Mhm.
and I was like, and until that moment, I really didn't understand what had happened,
Right, right.
in the mix. I mean, I had my dad hat on and, you're protecting my daughter. But when you
Hmm.
said it, you were hurt by that.
Hmm.
It was
Hmm.
like, you don't believe I can, you've taught me all of this stuff.
Right.
I'm articulate, I'm smart. I'm not going to embarrass you or anything.
Hmm.
But you
Hmm.
said, Dad, I can answer questions for myself.
Hmm.
And I don't really remember how old you were when that was the case, probably maybe 14, 15 or something like that. But I
Hmm.
remember from that moment, I mean, it was such a powerful moment that
Right.
I willfully understood and was very intentional about not doing that
Hmm.
going forward. I remember when we went down to Jacksonville, that's probably one of the biggest times where I felt it was in play. So
Hmm.
we visited the campus of Jacksonville University that was recruiting you.
Hmm.
And so we went to the restaurant. Coach Dunn is probably watching this, Jill Dunn.
Hmm.
Um, and we toured the campus and everything. And then we went to this meal. We had this, where they were basically
Yeah.
recruiting you.
Right.
And I remember like literally sitting on my hands.
Good for you. Good
Yes,
for you.
because they would ask a question and I was like, and I think I even said something like, "Oh, Danielle is fully capable of speaking for
Mhm,
herself."
mhm,
And at the end of the meeting that we had with them,
mhm.
there's always the close, so
Yeah.
there was like, "So what do you think, Danielle? Are you thinking about coming to Jacksonville?" And you said, "Uh, I'm gonna think about it and let you know."
Mhm.
Which is exactly what the seed I had hoped that I had planted in your mind.
Right,
Um,
right.
Now, you ended up going. You ended up
Mhm,
it was a great set of experiences, a lot of other experiences that'll probably come up in some of these, broadcasts that we're doing. But I
mhm,
remember in that moment being so proud of you,
mhm,
that here she is. She is in a position where, and for those of you, I was gonna say not to brag, but to brag, I'm gonna go ahead and brag a little bit. Jacksonville University, that was about $25,000 a year in scholarships. It was a Division I school, but it was also a really, really great college.
mhm,
And so I felt so good that basically this $100,000 decision was yours, not mine.
mhm.
And I remember thinking, that's what happens if you trust what you did before.
Right.
That at some point in time, you got to step back. One of my fraternity brothers is had just commented, learning how to step back. That is a really difficult thing because that's not what we're wired to do as parents up
Mhm.
until that time.
Right, right.
Um, but it turned out to be a great experience. So many learnings that came from that. But I remember even sitting down with you to talk about the schools, not
Mhm.
talking to you,
Right.
saying, "I think you need to go here. I think you need to go here."
Mhm,
Um, we looked at all the ratings of the schools and all that kind of stuff together. It was and your mom was factoring in this conversation too.
mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
but you were a part of the conversation, and the decision ultimately was your decision.
And I think the important part, there's a few like moments that I really want to capture here. One is that I appreciate the fact that you're having the conversation with me, but what I did not have were the tools to put it in perspective or to know how to put it together. Let's think about the pros and cons. Do you like it here? What's the geographic? So I think that for parents that are trying to figure out how to step back, I think it's, hey, how about we create the structure for them to create or make the right decisions for them anyway. And I think that that kind of structure is what, like, because I can't just go based off feeling. I know that, now we talk about that now.
Yeah.
I can't just be like, oh, yeah, feels good. Like, there's also, is this close to home? Do you want to be further away? All those things. So there's that light bulb. And I saw a light bulb moment over here from Tom O'Connor.
Mhm.
But the other thing was that I want to back up a bit and say, thank you for once I spoke up for myself, you listened to me because in that moment it wasn't rude. It was truly, I can speak up for myself back in the OI part. And I think that when, as parents, you can say, you know what, yeah, let me just listen and try to respect that space. That gave me confidence to speak up again. And that's not just with you, that's in life. So I think that when parents allow, respectfully, in the right time, all those things, not just going crazy, but I think that giving that space to respectful things that you're speaking up for yourself, I think that's something we should really congratulate, and especially in a young woman in the world that we live in, where especially women are not valued when they start talking,
Wow.
not as much. So I think that, if anything, that's something that I took away too. I didn't really even put together until now, was the ability to practice speaking up for myself, um inside the home, is in different areas, is really, really important, as you create the human that you hope you create, and the citizen that you can mold in this world. So yeah, that was
Well,
great.
first of all, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and when you say that, I was talking about it just a couple of minutes ago in terms of, the learning that happened.
Mhm,
Uh, I think it's really big that you pulled out just there how big, and I'm realizing it now, I think a little bit more after hearing what you said,
mhm,
how big that specific moment was.
Mhm.
Because had you said, "Dad, I can speak for myself," and I'd said
Mhm.
anything else,
Right.
it could have completely changed the trajectory of how much you trust me to
Yep.
tell me what's on your mind, how much you trust me
Mhm.
to be,
Man.
in your corner versus controlling you. I mean, had that I mean, my heart's pounding a little bit now. I'm glad it
Mhm.
worked out
Mhm.
'cause
Yeah,
I can
right.
see I mean, I can honestly think and feel back about
Yeah.
how different a moment like that
Yeah. It
be.
could have completely changed, me as a person, and then even I wanna go a step further, um, your relationship with men in general.
Mhm,
Like there's so many little pieces that if I was in some way torn down, not just by my father, but your father is usually the first man, that any little girl encounters.
mhm.
So, that's also something that's very important to even consider is that, I can speak um and be respected back. So,
That's what you should expect
yes,
from
exactly,
not
exactly.
not just get used to, but that
Right,
it should be an expectation.
exactly.
It and, there's it's amazing. I know people watch this and they think back and they think about, because I think people kinda go back on this little journey in their
Mhm.
lives just like we do.
Yeah.
And, I do a lot of work, a lot of leadership seminars and stuff like that in, my other life.
Mhm.
And it's striking how many times when I'm in a leadership training or a seminar, and I'm asking questions of the team that's in front of me, and the women in the team their responses are a little different because they'll say, well, because of what I usually say is, well, if it doesn't smell right, you should speak to it.
Mhm.
And the number of times you will hear them say, yeah, but you don't understand how that works around here because if I do that, that could be the end of my career, or
Yeah.
there could be retaliation, or not that they don't think it's right, but that this is the world, especially, it is a reality. It's a reality for our daughters that
Mhm.
the more they ascend, the more they're going to be in rooms like that where they
Yeah.
have to feel, uh, first of all, that they've earned their way there, but that when
Mhm.
you're in that space, that you should speak whatever your truth is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so yeah, that's massive.
Yeah, yeah, and I didn't even think we would uncover this, but I
No.
see, something else, if we could pull this question over, it's not really a question, it's more of a statement. My daughter is graduating from college
Oh
in
yeah.
May. Okay, so my daughter is graduating from college in May, and I'm trying to trust the decision she's making and not tell her what to do. So I would love to kind of talk about this because I think
Okay.
this is very important. Thank you, Greg, other Greg, for bringing this up. Um, I think that okay, so I'm speaking from my other side and also being older than the
Mhm.
college person. Okay, so what I would say is there's a projection that's happening, in my opinion. If there's some reason why either you don't completely trust it. Now I'm coming from a completely daughter side, so but what I would hope you can do is trust what you've done that she will make good decisions and release that because that's especially if she's graduating college that means adult life in a real way is getting real. The other piece of that is you won't make the right decisions and that's actually the times where you learn the most. So I mean I think that there's sometimes that I think my dad may have seen like ooh that is a bomb right there and she does not see it. But then at the very last minute, I say, "Dad, I saw that bomb," and he's like, "Whew, that was a hard one." So I think just in my experience, I've learned so much from my mistakes and my missteps that I wouldn't have it any other way. So if you're trying to avoid all of that for her, that's not going to be good in the long run, because she won't know how to maneuver anyway. And I think eventually they may get hit, they may run into a wall or two several times, but I hope that what you've instilled, that we'll figure it out. I think my dad can attest to. He's like, "Whoo, that was a
Oh
close
yeah,
one."
there was so fortunately not tons and tons of them,
Right, not tons, not
but
tons.
there were times where, and this it's great that you say that. There were
Mhm,
times where, especially then, and we've even talked about how as you've moved into entrepreneurship, how
mhm.
early on our
Mhm.
conversations were very different than they are now.
Yes.
Because Danielle would say something, and we'd be having this conversation, and I'm an entrepreneur, and she'll be saying, "Well, I think we're gonna do X, Y, and Z because that to me that just feels right. I have a good sense of
Mhm,
things, and
mhm,
I in my head I'm going, but my mouth is saying, you know what, live into what your decision is, and whatever it is, you
mhm.
will learn and you'll grow from it. And if it works, fantastic. If not, we just tweak it. And then I
Right.
hang up the phone and I'm going, oh my God, I cannot believe she's going to do that. I cannot believe. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Right.
Oh,
Right. Right, right.
I mean, and I wring my hands over it, and I sweat about it. And I'm going, oh my God, I
Oh,
can't
man,
believe it.
you're so good. You're so good. You keep it together. I would not have known that until I say what I find that the point that I finally get to, and then
Yes.
there's this level of sigh and exhale.
Yeah, but and even then,
Uh-huh. You
to
keep it together. You keep it
yeah, to
together.
take that
Yeah.
conversation to the next level is
Mhm.
there were uh there were times where I thought it was going to blow up and it didn't.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and had I responded as if it was going to be a terrible thing and you
Right.
didn't do it, a great thing might not have happened for you.
Wow.
So
Wow.
there's two ways of looking at that. Now,
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the other side, the things that I could see the pin had been pulled from the grenade, and because I just know, some things I do just know,
You just know.
was when the bomb went off and
Mhm.
you did come back to me and you
Mhm.
said, "Dad, that did not work out that well." That's a
Mhm.
pivotal moment too,
Mhm.
because what a parent says then is huge
Yeah.
because there's a couple of options in that moment. The options are,
I told you.
um, "I told you." See, you
Uh-huh.
don't ever listen to me. That's your problem.
Right.
And which probably will lend itself to you not listening to me or not talking to me because you don't
Mhm.
want, I mean, you
I
just
don't
took
want
one
that.
hit,
I don't
you
wanna
don't
hear
want
that.
another hit. You just right. Why would
Yeah.
you double the hit you took?
Mm-mm.
Or the other side of it to say, well, you know what? So where do you go from here?
Right.
What do we learn from this? What's your takeaway?
Mhm.
Um, because the fear that parents have and the fear that I had is that you're going to make mistakes. It's interesting. We don't typically think like parents, she's going to have victories. I'm not
Mhm.
wired to, look into the future for your victories. I'm wired to protect you, which is
Right.
where the mistakes are.
Right.
So, but the the thing about that is that that starts at 2, 3, 4, 5. It
Mhm.
doesn't start at 13, 14, 15 because by that time, folks, I'm telling you, it is too late.
Yeah.
I mean, I shouldn't say that. It is much more difficult, not too
Mhm.
late.
Mhm.
I remember thinking when you were younger that I will answer any question you ever ask me because you would ask some questions like, which is why we ended up, having third and fourth grade conversations when you're in the first grade.
Right,
But
right.
you would say, Dad, can I ask you a question? It would always start that way. And I would always go, where is this child going? Why is the sky blue? And then I'm realizing, I don't really know why the sky is blue. Let's look it up.
Mhm. Mhm.
The number of times where we would say science. Remember
Mhm.
when you were
Yeah,
younger, it's
yeah.
like the
Fine.
answer was like, Danielle, that's science. This is when you're 4 or 5, you're cracking up because you remember this. But that's like when you're
Right.
in the first grade and second grade. That's
Mhm.
science. And if I
Mhm.
didn't know, I would look it up with you. So
Mhm.
um, but there's a lot based on Brother Cade said, Greg Cade, my frat brother said, the
Mhm.
conversation built on respect. And
Yes,
that is
respect.
exactly the case. The the but it starts so young. It
Mhm.
has to start when they're, you know, all these conversations are manifestations of conversations that we had 15 or 20 years earlier. And this is, You just kind of have to believe if you plant the seed the right place, um, and you nurture it the right way, the seed being the kid, uh, that the right thing will happen. The other side of that, and this has not been the case for me, but it is the case sometimes for parents, that you do all of that and it still doesn't turn out the way you want it. And that's a very real thing for parents. Um, but if you did your part, then you let the world and your child evolve the way they are. And if you did the right things, even if they lose their mind, which all kids do in their teenage years, um, the hope is that the circle will become complete and they'll come back and go, you know what? I was a piece of work when I was a teenager, wasn't I? Yeah, yes, you were. Now, in those cases, you can go ahead and say it if you're a parent.
Right, right,
You
right.
absolutely were. Um,
So I have
yeah,
a question for you, and I
yeah,
know we're going to go into a little Q&A too.
yeah,
But it kind of goes on one of the questions that I know you're going to bring up.
mhm,
So, but I want to ask it now because I think
yeah,
it's relevant. You're mentioning, between 2, 4, 5. Those are important years.
mhm,
And I have some friends that have had issues with, let's say, their kid's mother and just difficulty making that all work. Sometimes it takes years to normalize what that looks like and all those things. What would you say to someone that's like, I've been trying all that really working hard to get there, but the way that it is or it's set up, how do I break in at that time if I can't see my kid?
So, do you mean in terms of the like the other
Like,
parent cooperation level?
yeah,
Or
the other parent cooperation level.
okay, so I think this is also a really important thing to talk about, and we talk about
Mhm,
it quite a bit in the book too.
mhm,
Is that to start with, there whatever created the separation, in our case the divorce, your mom and I are divorced. For some people it was never a divorce, it was just a separation.
mhm,
um, that there's probably a lot of hurt and pain there, uh, and that is not going to subside and just roll out like the tide just because it's nighttime. The fact is that there's a lot going on at the same time. And what's really important, I think, for parents to do in that moment is to be clear that this is not this, for example, for your mom and I, this was not about you. This was about us.
mhm.
And through some pretty difficult conversations, sometimes, I mean, if it was easy, if if everything
Yeah.
was just easy, things would have been different.
Mhm,
But that even the conversations, if we had difficult conversations, that they would always boil down to, okay, so when it comes to you and I, that's one thing. But when it comes to Danielle's welfare, every conversation that we have about her should be about her welfare and what's good for her and protecting her. And to make sure that our stuff doesn't become her stuff.
mhm,
Now, it's kind of difficult for that to be the case if one person ain't living there anymore. It
mhm,
kind of, there's some part of it that says it's your stuff, or you're affected by it, I should say. And you try to figure out, as you talk to people about in the first episode, what did you do? Did you create something? Was this your fault? Was did I misbehave or whatever?
mhm,
But I think it has to do with the fact that the conversations, around the kid should be, okay, this is for their welfare. This is
mhm,
for, what is best for Danielle. And
mhm,
there were things that, decisions that were made, conversations that we had around, where you might go to school and other things where we didn't agree
mhm,
necessarily all the time. But
mhm,
the point was always, what is the best thing for Danielle? And so if we could keep that conversation, um, alive and well in the middle of the rest of it, that gives you a fighting chance.
Mhm.
Um, so, uh, but it actually does lend itself to some of these questions that I've gotten,
Yeah.
and and you've gotten a couple of them too.
Yeah,
So
I've gotten a couple. Let's do
yeah,
it.
so literally one of the questions that someone sent me was, "What should I do if the other parent isn't being cooperative?"
Mhm.
And which is a very broad question because cooperative can mean a lot of different things. Is it cooperative meaning I can't see my kid, or cooperative meaning you don't, you know, give them you had a phone number that I could call directly. Cooperative the postcards never got put in the child's hand that you
Mhm.
sent. There's a lot of different things around cooperative. Was there a birthday party that you had that I didn't know took place? So it's a lot of stuff around that.
Mhm.
Cooperative can go a lot of different
That's
places.
deep. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and these are real things.
Mhm.
Um, so one of the things that um, about that actually was tied to another question, because the question of child support very often comes up because that's a major, major, major thing, conversation piece with when there are kids that are separated, not kids that are separated, parents that are separated, and there's a child. The whole conversation around child support. So I'm going to kind of combine both of these two. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a psychotherapist. Your mom actually is a psychotherapist, by the way.
Right.
Um, but the question sometimes comes up. I feel like my kid's being used like a chess piece against me. Like
Mhm.
they're using my
I've heard
child.
that one.
Yes.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of it comes down to the way you even legally set this up. For example, a lot of guys will pay child support with like a verbal agreement with the mom. Okay, so we're not together. I need this much from my child, and the guys, says okay, or something very informal, and
Mhm.
so they send a check or a money order or whatever it is along that period of time. And that's good because that meeting some obligation is better than not meeting your obligation at all. But what I have always encouraged men to do is that if that is what you're going to do, you need to have something legal in place that codifies your child support, because it doesn't just codify your child support, it also um, uh, sets terms for visitation, for example, and for what's going to happen every other weekend and what holidays and all these other types of things. See, if you don't have something that is some form of a legal document, then you are completely at the whim of this person because they're not obligated to do it. Not to be shady or anything for
Yeah.
either parents, because this could be either parent.
Mhm.
But look, if I'm supposed to have you this weekend and I can't find you, I'd much rather send the sheriff to go find you so I can get my kid than to be trying to call around and ask Bebe and them, have you seen so and so?
Right.
That does she have the kid with her? So, but a lot of guys are reluctant to do that because that now they are legally on the hook for this child support.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's like I don't want to be leaked, because if I don't do my child support, my wages could be garnished.
Mhm.
There you could actually there's jobs you can't get if you're
Mhm.
in arrears on your child support. It's like
Right.
having a bad debt thing associated with you. Um, but it's your child,
Right.
so you should do that. It should
Right.
absolutely be something you do, and it's not something you should shy away from. And you should do it because it also affords you additional, not protections, but legal rights in terms of access and all these other kind of things that can actually be up in the air. I'll tell you a really interesting story really quickly, because I know you have a couple of these questions too. I
Mhm.
was doing a seminar. This is the other reason that you want to make sure you do this, because you want to believe everybody wants to believe that everybody has the right intentions, but everybody doesn't. And
Mhm.
people sometimes stay angry for a very long time. And some people are vindictive on both sides of the coin.
Mhm.
There was a gentleman that came to one of our seminars, one of the Dad from a Distance seminars, almost a decade ago. And he and the child's mother had an agreement between them that he was going to, this was going to be the amount of the child support and all this other stuff. Well, not only was he giving her money over that period of time, uh, he was giving it to her in cash.
Mm.
And then the child turned 18, which is, for better or for worse, I have to tell you, for dads with child support, if you see a guy dancing a little bit too heavily, ask him whether the kid just turned 18 or not, because that's usually the last formal
That's
child.
fair.
Yes,
That's
yes, is real. Um, and so he thought his obligation was done, and she took him to court and said that he never paid child support. And it was a six-figure judgment that was levied against him that
fair.
required
Whoa.
him to pay back child support because he had no documentation, nothing
Mm.
that said that he had done all those things. So, is it worth it to do? Absolutely, but not just to protect yourself. It's because that's your child.
Mhm.
You do have an obligation. So, I'm going to put a pin in that one because I want to come back to child support in a minute because there's a bunch of other things around child support that people ask. But what
Okay.
was one of the questions that somebody posed to you?
So, one I get often, I'm looking for here. Like, how has divorced parents impacted you?
Mhm.
And sometimes it's surrounded around what age that my parents got divorced. So, um, the truth is that a lot of my friends that I grew up with, we almost, not all of us have divorced parents, but a lot of people have divorced parents.
Mhm.
So, it's definitely not weird or strange when people have divorced parents. But I do think it's interesting what different people face, and I'm kind of interested in what the chat believes too, is how having divorced parents impacts you. I think that there's like I'm always there's a good there is it's a balanced situation. It is what it is on the level of impact. I think that one thing that I do see in common is um, we usually get to see, we understand our parents more separately. So I have a more personal relationship rather than having my parents actually together and almost meshing as one.
Right.
Um, so I think that that's kind of a cool thing. But I would also say because a lot of um, people that I know have divorced parents, we don't always know what love looks like. And what I know one thing that I had to learn was what arguments look like because
Mm.
I had no idea what it. I thought if I was having an argument in a relationship, we were done. I thought that was it. I thought we wouldn't survive, and you're not supposed to have arguments in relationships because I didn't know that
Mm.
relationships had arguments.
Right.
And I think that's most a lot of children if they don't even see their parents having those kind of engagements. But a lot of people see a lot of it in their home. So they accept that arguments are something that's always supposed to happen, which is not great. But then there's also us that I didn't know. I was just like, I don't know what to say. How do you get through an argument? How do I not be mad at you for the rest of my days? Like after this
Yeah.
small thing. So I think that that's one thing, and I think it really depends on age because my parents divorced when I was 6. As though you're not my parent, but that was for everybody else.
Right.
Um, and then I also have friends that they got their parents got divorced when they were teenagers. So there's like a whole lot of what we were talking about a little earlier. You're trying to fire your parents, but then there's all this other stuff going on. So I think that I thought that was an interesting thing that I've noticed is recognizing and noticing what a healthy relationship looks like um,
Mm.
from the outside looking in. Because you don't get to see all the ins and outs of a relationship, of any relationship. But I think that it's really interesting in that respect that a lot of my friends that grew up with that same experience, we had to kind of figure out what a healthy relationship dynamic look like, and not giving too much, not get, it was just trying to find that balance. And I think that that's just interesting. It just is what it is. There's always something to how you grew up, but I think that's interesting. I'm curious if anybody else. I see somebody else said learning what love looks like and how to argue. Yeah, so I had that exact same experience, which was like, okay, I don't want to yell. Now I respect you. Just, what does that look like? So
Well,
that was an interesting question.
well, it's a fascinating question, and as you're talking about that, it's the thing that I don't think that's ever exactly crossed my mind that that would be a thing
Mm-hmm.
you would have to try to figure out on your own because you don't know what you don't know what making up looks like after
Right.
an argument,
Right. Right.
and how long that's supposed to take, and
Right.
and but at the same time, and this is for not just parents from a distance. This is for parents, I think, in general,
Mm-hmm.
um, and for kids, is that um, not knowing or not seeing toxicity as
Yes. Yep.
tolerable as
Yep.
well. You
Yep.
know,
Exactly.
I think kids are of all ages are really, really smart, and I think even the things they can't understand, they know what bothers them and what doesn't bother them.
Mm-hmm.
So, if there are parents that call each other out of their name, I don't care whether you get on the other side of that argument or not. What you're teaching your child is that not only will there be arguments, but I should expect that I can and or will be called out of my name.
Right.
Or even probably would go as far even as domestic violence as to
Mm-hmm.
what people would say.
Accept.
Yeah, that this just goes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really that's
Yeah.
deep what you just said there.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, because it's hard to figure it out under the most classic nuclear
Right.
family circumstances
Exactly.
what exactly is supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so wow. So thank
Yeah.
you for that. That's
Yeah. No
something
problem.
that's something to think about.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm going to pivot back into another question that says the question was, what if I think my child support isn't being used for my kid?
Mm.
So gentlemen, because typically this is going to be you. It's not always, but typically this is going to be you. I've got a hard pill for you to swallow. It was a hard pill for me to swallow. It's a hard pill for virtue. And some guys have never swallowed the pill. It is like the size of a desk. They can't swallow it. But here's the reality of things. You don't get to have a say in that. You pay child support, and as much as it stings for me to say that, you don't have a say,
Mm.
because
That's hard.
it is hard, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also real.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're paying child support and your kid is asking you for shoes, but other parent just got a new car, you can't say anything about that. I know you want to. I know you feel as though, and by the way, there's legal recourse you could take if you thought it was that big a deal. But for the most part, when you're paying child support, you have no say. That money goes to ever that other parent feels that money needs to go to take care of the kid. And if they are good stewards of that money, great. If they are bad stewards of that money, you have zero to say about it. And from just advocating from like a dad's point of view, just as a little bit um, slanted, not a little bit, probably a lot slanted. This is the bane of a lot of guys' existence, and it is not fair. And by the way, but it's not built to be fair in that respect. So, um, one of my good friends, Laura Harris, is a woman that was paying child support.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. So it doesn't really matter
Yeah.
who it is that's doing it, you the you have to really let go of that because otherwise it will make you very, 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 very bitter.
Mm,
So let me switch that up a little bit. So uh, because the other question, and I'll tie this into this and I'll throw it back to you, is what should your child know about these things?
mm,
And the answer is absolutely nothing. Because child support is not your child's issue. It's your child's parents' issue. So never, you never even knew what my child support was until you were 18, and we had that conversation after a
mhm.
conversation about a car came up. You
Yeah.
probably
Right.
pulled out a
Right.
legal pad and went to a restaurant and had a
Mhm.
conversation.
Yeah.
Um, but that's not your child's issue. If you're taking your child out to dinner and it's your weekend and you're going to the mall and you're saying that, oh, I want some shoes. Your child should never hear this. I give your mama money every month to get you shoes. Never should anything like that ever cross your lips to your child, because it does a lot of things. All of them are toxic. So now I have my child thinking, is my mom not doing something for me that she's supposed to be? Now I'm creating an issue that may not even be an issue between that child and their other parent. Um, but also, honestly, in retrospect, when I think about it, even when I hear it, it's pretty petty. Now, is it founded in some real feelings? Yeah, but it's pretty petty.
Mhm.
Um, One of the things that I say in the talk about in the book, and you can attest to this, is that not only should you not have that kind of conversation with your child, and this is something I've seen happen a lot, and it breaks my heart. Your child should never hear you say um, a foul word or a bad word about their parent ever. I don't care how you feel about them, but you should never say anything about your parent, about the child's other parent that is negative in any way in front of. Now, people vent all the time. If you want to do this with your buddies, you know, have at it. But in front of your child, even the small things. I remember I was at a lunch with a couple of guys and our kids, and I remember the dad saying something like, the kid said something about mom, and the dad said, "Well, you know how your mama is. She don't know what to do." And it was just like he was joking, but I looked at his daughter, and her heart sank in that moment. She was so embarrassed because that's not really what she was even talking about.
Mhm.
But I'm thinking, what are you teaching her about how you respect not just her mom, but women?
Mhm. Right.
What do you say about me when I'm not there? And so that is a cardinal sin.
Yeah.
Now, can you think it? Can you feel it? Can you be upset? Can you be frustrated about it? Absolutely. You can feel any way you want to, but never, and this is for mothers or fathers, never should you utter a word that is a negative word about that other parent, because really what you're doing, and I'm editorializing here, maybe, probably, but what you're really doing is you're injecting your stuff into the relationship you have with your child.
Right.
And that was not your child's decision.
Mhm.
Um, and that is a forever thing. That does not change. I mean, you
Right.
and I mean, you're 33 years old now.
Mhm.
Um, are you about to be 33 years old?
I'm gonna be 33 in July.
Yeah. When did that happen? But even now,
Mhm.
there's a respect that is there. I mean, one of the questions, so you had a question about how parents relate or something. So what did you
Yeah, yeah. So before we get into that, I do want to address this it shouldn't be hard for the non-custodial parent to understand. And I think that um I think that in a logical situation it's not hard, but I think that in other situations where I have seen my friends, even again I have a lot of friends that are parents now, sometimes it can be difficult to accept that you don't have control over something that you're working hard for. So I just want to put that out there. I don't think it shouldn't be. I think that it's just dependent on every situation. So, but I completely agree with you overall, in general, for very smart and caring parents.
Right.
Um, so the question that I had was, do your parents speak to each other? That's kind of a thing that I don't know if like as we get older, like it's like, oh, do your parents speak to each other? So a few of my friends there, because they have siblings, they'll have like group chats with their parents. And for me, I was like, well, my parents really only spoke when it had something to do with me. So that's so now that I'm of this age, no.
Mhm.
I don't think that's bad. I think that it's just it is what it is. It's like, but I think if something was coming up or if it was a planning of, some big event or anything, I think it would be perfectly fine. There would be no issue. But I think that, that's something that I think as older adults, I see a lot of my friends like, well, do your parents talk to each other? Because now we're older. We don't need to, that interaction doesn't always have to be there. So I always find that to be an interesting question.
Well, and I think it's situational. If
Right,
you think
right.
back to what we were talking about before, that, for example, your mom and I, our
Hmm.
conversations, the pretty much every conversation we had was Danielle centered.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't Danielle centered, because quite frankly, the rest of them didn't always go that well.
Right, right,
They were
right.
Danielle centered.
Mhm,
Um, so that does happen over time. When,
mhm,
for example, you are graduating from high school,
mhm,
or you're graduating from college,
mhm.
and we're there, or grad school, whether it's college or grad school,
Yeah,
or when your mom was dealing with health issues.
yep,
I actually went
yeah,
down to
yeah.
Jacksonville and visited with you and her
Mhm,
when she was going through some those health issues.
yep.
So I think it's probably not just a matter of do they, but how they.
Mhm. How they I
Yeah,
100% agree.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's very comfortable for me. I don't think that I think it's very, very normal and it makes sense. Like it's like we're all just living, you know?
yeah, well,
Yeah.
what a lot of people may your friends and my friends will know this, but most people are unaware that at the time when your mom and I got divorced, and then of course I got remarried.
Mhm,
And so you have two sisters that are Melody's daughters,
mhm, mhm.
that all four parents lived within a radius that was so small that
Right,
all of you would have gone to exactly the same schools, no matter whose
right.
house you lived at. I mean, it was not impossible to go to the Publix down the street and have every one of us in that space in exactly the same time.
Mhm,
And so, but it also was how we engaged at your basketball games
mhm,
or at a tournament, because I always went, she always went. If there was parent teacher conferences, I went, she went. If we
mhm.
had doctor's appointments, I went, she went. So again, I think what happens over time is you learn how to be in the same space.
Right.
It's in the same space about Danielle, not in the same
Mhm.
space about me.
Right.
So it was cordial. There
Yep.
was there was never, in fact, people, I think that even kind of confused people
It
sometimes.
did confuse a lot of
That,
people.
yeah, because all four parents could be in the same space, and people would almost be looking at us like, "Uh-oh, so I'm going to jump off now," but it doesn't, because that's
Right,
not really what it was about. It was
right.
about taking care of you and making
And
sure.
thank you to just being and Melody and my mom and I just really appreciate everybody just being as far as where I could see, very great and mature about this. I never felt any weird other than the normal weirdness, like they're not sitting right next to each other, right? and you have to kind of go to two different areas in the gym. But I think, I think that knowing that there's a balance and a respect between parents also helps the kid have a self-respect for themselves.
Yeah.
So I think everything kind of alludes to that. I mean, if you listen to a lot of things, I know we got to wrap up here, but if you listen to a lot of books or different presentations, everything is based in childhood, and so even something as small as self-respect. So I think that when you can see that within your parents, even if I'm just seeing it, that's good. That's good for me. And I think that and I've learned as I got older how important it is and how it really made me who I am. So, um,
Well, this
thanks.
is awesome. So we have moved into a whole different territory here, Danielle,
Yeah.
with these conversations. So
Yeah, I agree.
I wanted to uh, publicly thank the folks that reached out and
Mhm.
asked questions. Uh,
Yes.
the guys are the way the guys always are. Typically, they send either a text or like then you're putting it out in the stratosphere. But they did reach out and they asked questions. I
Yeah.
hope you guys that are watching this are that it's working for you
Mhm.
to hear us talk about things that are very real things. Not all of these conversations are easy lifts,
Yeah.
but I think we have both decided that we want to start incorporating more of this as we approach Father's Day.
Mhm.
Um, so send me a text, a messenger message. I don't know how to get my messages on Instagram yet. You'll have to teach me how to do that.
I got you.
Um, but and do the same thing for Danielle,
Yes,
uh,
please.
because we all grow through this, and certainly I know Danielle and I are both growing through this. So
Mhm.
I love
Very
you,
healing,
Danielle.
very healing. Love you too. And thank you all for joining. This has been great.
Absolutely, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks, and who
Yes.
knows what's going to happen.
Right.
All right, bye, baby bear.
Bye.